Good evening, and welcome back to the Placid Plastic Podcast. I'm Lucas, and I'm here with my co-host David.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back.
All right, and what did you want to talk about today?
So, do you remember literally a decade ago now, maybe a little bit more than a decade, when Telltale games were really popular and they were coming out like every 6 months?
Ye- they did that? They had that many?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Okay. So, first of all, I guess I should ask, which ones did you play?
None.
Did you, but you know what? You know what I'm talking about, right? Like the
Yeah,
twos,
I know
like
they had
the.
The Walking Dead. They had The Wolf Among Us. They did Minecraft Story Mode, I think.
I think they've been doing games for a while, but the first that they tried the formula of your choices matter was they started with the Jurassic Park game back in 2011, and that was basically, it was like, oh, it takes place after the first game, and there's still some people left in the park trying to escape, and then there's also mercenaries who come onto the island because Dennis Nedry, the guy that got eaten by the spitting dinosaur,
Okay.
never made it to the boat, so they're trying to recover the Barbasol can. But anyway, so the very first big game they made of that formula was Jurassic Park. Then they made The Walking Dead, which was their biggest game. The first season, I played it as episodes were coming out, because if you remember, it was episodic at the time.
Yeah.
You paid like $15-$20 per episode, I think. But that was really popular. And then The Wolf Among Us came out, which is also a personal favorite of mine. But then, like, they made 4 separate Walking Dead seasons, and they also did a Michonne spinoff from the show. They also did Borderlands. They did Batman. They did a Back to the Future game.
Oh, is the Borderlands one Tales from the
Yes.
Borderlands?
That's them.
I didn't realize.
I think they made a Guardians of the Galaxy one, if I'm not mistaken. They also made a couple of spin-off poker games called Poker Night 1 and 2. Its own can
You
of
played
worms.
that, right?
Yeah, I played Poker Night 2, which was a lot of fun back then.
I didn't realize that was Telltale.
Yeah, it's actually, you can't get them on Steam anymore because they used a bunch of licensed characters. Like Poker Night 2, the one that I played, had Ash Williams from from The Evil Dead.
Yeah.
They also had Claptrap from Borderlands, because at the time that's when they were making their Tales from the Borderlands game. So it's like a little like, oh, look what we're doing.
Yeah.
And then they made, and of course, as you know, eventually they went bankrupt and closed down around 2016 because they're basically pumping out these. I say choose your own adventure, but I'm not really sure what to categorize them as. Where they were just pumping these games out and the novelty wore off, because the reason why the first season of The Walking Dead was like their big ticket, like, to exploding in popularity, was because if you remember, around 2012 and 2013 was when the whole, like, oh, your choices matter type games were really taking their stride. Like, the Mass Effect trilogy had just wrapped up, for better and for worse. We know how badly that trilogy ended, but the whole draw of the Mass Effect trilogy was, oh, what you do in the first game will carry on to the second game, and the second game will carry on to the third game. The butterfly effect, if you will.
Yeah.
Dragon Age was still coming out with games. Until Dawn, I believe, was coming out in 2014. I remember you and I and a couple of our friends played that way back. And the idea of this butterfly effect type games, where what you do in one part will have an effect later on, was really popular. But eventually, like any big fad, it comes and goes.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually, in 2016 is when people stopped caring. And plus, like, are you really, like, clamoring for a Guardians of the Galaxy butterfly effect game? Because I certainly wasn't.
Yeah,
but
there is a sense of, what is it? Responsibility when you play those games to get multiple endings and play it over and over again. So when you have so many of them, honestly, I feel like it just gets exhausting.
Oh, I also remember they also did a Game of Thrones game.
That was the one.
And that was very forgettable. I actually played a couple episodes, and that actually brings me to the whole point of why I asked you this question in the first place. The reason why I asked is because, looking back a decade later, like, as an adult, because these came out when we were teenagers, as an adult with hindsight, yeah, the whole idea of your choices matter was a load of shit. Okay. When I've been watching a lot of videos lately on specifically the Walking Dead Telltale games, and
Okay.
it's very apparent that as they were developing each episode, like they developed episode 1 and then they moved on to episode 2, episode 3 of a certain season, it's very clear that they did not have a roadmap whatsoever when designing these episodes. And I don't know if that was just, writers coming and going, staff shuffling around, but it's very clear that they did not have okay, we want to start here, we want these things to happen, and we want to end up here when they were going from episode to episode. It's very clear. It was like, well, we'll have these characters do this in this one episode, and then, we'll think about how that's going to affect the next episode when we're done with this episode. And you see that in how choices that they prop up as, well, if you go this route, it'll have this effect in the next episode. But what happens is, regardless of what choice you pick, like you could have 2 options or 3 options, right? How to approach a scenario. Regardless of what choice you pick, you will always end up at the same conclusion.
Yep.
And that's the really frustrating thing, is because when you're younger and you're playing these games episode to episode, and you're like, I can't wait to see how different options that I pick reflect on the next episode. Like maybe for a good example, is in the first season, and spoilers for a decade-old game for anyone that hasn't played it, there's a point where this character is about to fall to his death, and you're holding on to his arm, and you can have a choice whether or not you want to let go or pull him up. And it's like, that's like the big final choice of this one episode. Like, are you going to let him go? Or are you going to pull him up? And if you let him go, he dies. But if you pull him up, obviously he lives. And it's like, okay, well, how's that going to reflect in the next episode? Well, it doesn't mean shit, because he's just going to die early on in the next episode anyway. And that's it. That was a huge problem when the second season of The Walking Dead came out, because what would happen is they'd have these scenarios where, you can either choose to save a character or let them die. But the problem is, whether it was budget or technological limitations, they basically became marked for death, where if you saved this character that could have died, rather than come up with all these new dialogue and choice options for this character that is alive in this one section when they could be dead, they just have them stand in the background saying nothing until they eventually end up dying. And that was a really big problem, because you would literally like go out of your way to save these characters, and they'd maybe like say like one word, but they would be removed from the plot for about 30 minutes until they eventually ended up dying anyway. And that was the huge problem with any of these games. Like, I like The Wolf Among Us a lot. I think it's fantastic. So to go off on a tiny bit of a tangent, Telltale has been like revived, quote unquote, kind of. It's not actually Telltale, but they're making a second season of The Wolf Among Us, or at least I think they are. They announced it like 2 years ago, and nothing's come since. So
Yeah,
I was in development hell.
I did hear about that. Yeah, I mean, 2 years with the way games are taking now, I feel like if they really want to match up to what they were trying to do, then they would take that time. Like, GTA 6 has been in development for like the past 10 years, or no, sorry, not 10 years, probably the last six years.
Yeah,
and we still haven't really seen anything official of as far as like gameplay. Wait, have we? I feel like there's been
no gameplay.
Okay. Yeah, there's just a leak.
Yeah, there's been the leak, and then there's been like, it's going to take place in like a Miami Vice. I think it's taking place in Vice City.
Yeah, it's the Miami one.
Exactly, yeah. But to go back to the Telltale thing, so even with The Wolf Among Us Season 1, which I consider even better than The Walking Dead Season 1, which for the viewers might be a little bit controversial, there are a lot of times in The Wolf Among Us where they make you think that your choices have weight to them, but really you end up at the same exact conclusion. And that was really apparent in the Game of Thrones spin-off game, where at the end of the first episode, your character can be talking with a character from the show. And regardless of how you navigate the conversation, what you say to him, how you act, whether you're a dick to him or super negotiating or very kind, regardless of what choices you make, you will always die at the end of the first episode, no matter what. And I went back and went through every single possible choice. This was back in, I think the first episode came out in like 2014. No matter what I did, my character would always die at the end of the first episode. And that to me was just like, okay, so obviously the idea of my choices matter is a lie, because no matter what I do and what I say, I will always end up in the same exact spot regardless of what I do. And it's funny just looking back now and and I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos on like, okay, the troubled development for a lot of these games, because one of the main reasons why Telltale shut down is because they were pumping out all these games. They were doing quantity over quality.
Yeah.
And because they're pumping out all these games, there's like, okay, well, we'll just make them think they have freedom of choice, but really, regardless of what they do, these characters are always going to die. You're always going to end up at this spot no matter what you do.
Yeah,
And
more or less your choices affect just how everyone dies.
exactly. Your choices affect when people die and how you get to the spot that you will always get to. And they're in one of the really bad cases of that. So at the end of the second season of The Walking Dead, you have the last two remaining characters, the last two remaining side characters end up fighting each other, and they're trying to kill each other. And your character chooses who you're going to side with of the two characters that are trying to kill each other. And the season ends with either one of the person dying. So then it ends with you going off with the other person. And so that was the first time that's like, oh, well, maybe when they do the next season, maybe things are going to be different, because now the season ends with two different people. Well, what they did for the third season is you're playing a completely different person and a completely different story. And then that girl from the first and second season shows up to help you. And the adult that you're with at the end of the second season is nowhere to be found. And you can ask, what's your story? And she's like, oh, I was with either person A or person B from the end of the second season, and they died.
So off screen, no less.
They literally get off screened. And so the whole point of that is like, okay, so what was the point of me saving either person at the end of the second season if they both just die off screen? And that was everybody. I didn't play the third season, but I remember people, and I watched the clips online, and I remember people commenting like, did they really do that? They really off screened both people? That is such bullshit. And I think around the time of the third season is when people started to like see the cracks in Telltale's writing. It's like, oh, it doesn't actually matter what we do. We're always going to end up in the same exact spot, regardless of what we do. And I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel like even now, with how far things have progressed in 10 years with technology and gaming, I still think we haven't gotten a game where your choices really do matter and really do change the story. I don't know if you know any games that are like that, but I still have yet to play a game where it's like, okay, wow, what I do will determine, will have the game play out extremely differently. They'll always lie to you and be like, oh, well, if you spare this person or you kill this person, things will be different. But regardless of what you do, you'll always end up in the same spot. Do you know any games that maybe do a good job of that? Or do you feel the same way where it's like, we haven't had a game that does that yet?
Well, there is an extent, I would say. Like, now I haven't beaten Cyberpunk, so this is kind of a shallow statement, but because the game, actually, fun fact, my game is broken. Like, even if I reinstall it, it just crashes on load.
I'm actually stunned. I thought you beat Cyberpunk. What happened? Real quick, what happened with your game?
Well, I had started modding it, right, at some point, and because they hadn't been doing any updates, I was like, great, this is fine. I can get some mods in, and they'll be simple. They're not going to break the game. They're not mods that change big things. Like, one added flying cars, the other gave me like an invisible grappling hook, which was fucking awesome to use, by the way. Although it was super roundabout on the way it controlled. So I've been playing it like that for a while, and then they did a small patch that just broke it, and I was like, shit, all right, well, maybe because they just announced like the Phantom Liberty or whatever they called it, and then they're gonna do some more stuff. And the patch notes they said, and I was like, I'll just give it some time, wait till there's more in the game, because I didn't want to beat it early on, because I started playing it before the game was complete. It was still pretty new when I got it. And, I mean, it was fun. I enjoyed it. I have no issues with the game. And even though it does kind of have some stupid bugs and shit, like, the game itself was a fun game. I enjoyed it. It just stopped working after that, and I wasn't able to load it at any point since.
What was the choice? Your choices actually matter.
So I know there's some things that had been spoiled for me in the game on your end game choices that change how your character is. It essentially changes how they act and how Like it changes the character more to more or less, and that's I thought that sounds pretty solid. You can choose to side with certain people, and um, have like conversations, get like texts back and forth with other characters. But as far as the end outcome, there's still like your three choice kind of thing, similar to like Mass Effect 3. You got A, B, and C. Make your choice. No matter what you do in between,
The
that's
different colors.
exactly that's the final choice that you get. Is just three options. I don't know if that's like a 1-to-1 for Cyberpunk. Like I said, I never got that far, but um, that was the gist I got. I liked how it was handled for the most part. I know The Witcher is a little more different. Uh, that's more of a romance thing though. Like, do you pick Yen? Do you pick Triss? Do you pick
Or
neither
both
of
if you
them?
want.
You go for both of them. You go for neither of them, and you choose. I think a girl from the DLC or something, who was in like a previous game. I don't remember. She's like a healer.
There was I want to just touch on something real quick with Telltale. So there was, do you remember the meme of "they will remember that"
Oh
or "he
yeah,
will remember that"? So
absolutely.
that comes from those Telltale games. There'd be funny instances where you'll say something to someone in like the heat of an argument, and it'll say, "Oh, Lucas remembers that," and then 5 seconds later, that person will die. And it's like, well, I don't think they're gonna remember that anymore. And they would do that all the time with Telltale, where it'd be like, oh, you're having this huge argument, or you're in the middle of a shootout and you say something, or something happens to you tell a character something and they frown and it says, so and so remember that, and then 2 seconds later they'll get jumped by a zombie and killed. And that happens all the time in the first, second season of The Walking Dead. And it's like, well, why would you tell me they're gonna remember that if they just die instantly?
Yeah, it's a little weird. That did remind me though, because you had mentioned it earlier too. Oh God, what was it called? The remembering made me think of something else. People dying.
Uh-oh.
Ah, shit.
Uh-oh. Was it Cyberpunk?
It wasn't Cyberpunk. It was.
Witcher?
Oh, it was the Until Dawn people.
Oh,
The
yeah.
the Quarry. It had those. It had options. It had things that mattered. Like if someone dies, it makes it so that your characters have a harder time surviving, right? Because they're
Okay.
down a man now, and like that built off. They've done a good job of that, I think, so far. As you know, Until Dawn very much hammers the butterfly effect into your brain with everything being butterfly symbology.
Do you remember when we were playing that all those years ago, and I was in control of a character, and I was supposed to stand, I was supposed to hold the controller still, and I sneezed, and my controller jolted, and my character died. Do you remember that?
I remember the story. I don't think I was there for it when that
we
part happened.
we were playing, and it was a part near the end of the game where you're hiding behind a pillar, and these I believe the monsters are called the Wendigos.
Yeah.
There's this Wendigo stalking me, and it can't see, but it kills you based on sound.
Yeah.
And I'm supposed to hold the controller still in my hands, and I I was trying to hold in a sneeze, and I tried so hard, but the scene just kept going, and obviously it was drawing out because that's the whole point. You're supposed to be stressed out, and I finally couldn't hold it, and I sneezed, and I jolted my head forward, and my hands shot forward, and my character died instantly. Like when it cut to a cutscene where my character got beheaded by the Wendigo, and I was like, oh, that's great. And it was literally like one of the last three things you had to do before the game ended. And I was like, wow, my character died right before the finish line. And
Oh yeah.
Until Dawn was more, I would say Until Dawn was very disappointing for me, because the whole draw of that game was, oh, you take like a psychological test at the beginning, like, what are you afraid of most? And it's like you choose spiders, blood, bugs, other stuff, and you take this questionnaire, and your game experience changes based on the questionnaire, or at least it was supposed to. And I think there was like maybe like one or two or maybe three things that were changed based on my decisions that I made the questionnaire at the beginning. And I remember at the end, when we finished that game, I turned to you guys and I was like, I feel like that stuff I did at the beginning didn't really matter. And so what I did is when we all went home, I went onto my computer and I looked up like Until Dawn, all different ways the questionnaire is reflected in the game. And yeah, it was like minor stuff. Like there was one scene where you're in this underground area and like you could have bugs crawling down the wall, you could have blood pouring out of the wall, stuff like that, just minor stuff where the actual content of the story remains unchanged. It's more like special effects. And
I think I like that more.
You think so?
Yeah, I think because it now they should probably present it differently. It does seem like what they're going to say is going to matter. It's going to be a big deal. It's going to change. What are you scared of? We're going to make the game based on your fear. But that's not what it's doing. It's just saying, hey, here's a couple questions, and we'll try to make a little more tense and uncomfortable for you. Which
I'll tell you what game
I think is a good thing.
I'll tell you what game does that really well. Silent Hill Shattered Memories. This is a game that came out the Wii and the PS2 back in 2009, and it's a remake of the first game, kind of, where it's the same plot, but there are certain sections of the game that are broken up between you being in Silent Hill and you being in a therapist office.
Yeah,
and he'll ask you questions like, fill out this questionnaire describing what you were like in school. And depending on what you fill out, characters will look different, characters will act different. The scene, like the way the background looks will be different. For example, if the first officer, Sybil, from the first game, she'll show up, and depending on how, like, you fill out this personality questionnaire at the very start of the game, like, okay, would you describe yourself as a laid-back person? Do you get angry easily? Do you have, I think one of the questions, like, do you have a pornography problem or something like that? But the reason why they ask all that is because the way Sybil will look and act is based on your questionnaire. So if you go into this diner and you ask her, hey, have you seen my daughter? Depending on your decisions, she'll either be very kind and like, oh, no, let me, let's go find her, or be like an asshole, be like, sir, I'm busy, I don't have time for you. And depending on her appearance will look different. She may look like a serious, no nonsense cop, or she'll look more like a slutty cop. And you'll have other sections where he'll be asked to fill out he'll give you a picture. He's like, I need you to fill out this picture of this house. And you can color this picture, and based on how you color the picture, that's how it will show up in the next cutscene when you go up to the house. So if you color this house red, and you color the two people with like a blue and a green shirt, you color the porch like orange, and you go up to the house in the next chapter, it will look like that.
That's pretty neat.
And so there are other aspects of the game where if you do certain stuff, the way the plot plays out will be a little bit different. The way people look will be different. And it's really, really cool.
Yeah,
I think that's the best case of that.
Yeah, that sounds like exactly what... Yeah, I know what I just said about it being like a background thing is cool and all, but like Supermassive Games, the developers for Until Dawn and the Dark Pictures Anthology, all that, they have, you know, the person that you talk to in between like missions and stuff or whatever, in between chapters, I guess. And in Until Dawn, it's a therapist. So it's like all that stuff that you just said would have been such a perfect way to do it, because it's literally that same concept. You talk to this guy, and he essentially, you explain to him the way things are going to happen or how they're going to look, and when you play that section of the game, it reflects that, and that's actually really cool. And I think that would have been nice to see in these games by Supermassive.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing with Shattered Memories is that was smack dab in the middle of the Western developers trying all sorts of different types of Silent Hill games, and unfortunately, most of the Western in fact, almost all the Western developed Silent Hills have a negative reputation, including Shattered Memories. And like the therapist stuff and how that reflects in the story is great, but the problem with that game is, one, it's super short. Two, you don't actually fight any enemies. The only time you ever interact with them is you run away, and you have like these scripted chase sequences. And because it's a Wii game, the motion controls suck. Those chase sequences where these enemies are chasing after you, and you have to use you have to move the Wii remote in a certain way to like throw stuff out of the way, and if a monster jumps on you, to shake the Wii remote and nunchuck a certain way for him to throw you off. And because it's the Wii, it's not that very good. It's not very responsive, so it's a very frustrating game to play. Now you can get the PS2 version with the controller if you're willing to spend $300-$400. So unfortunately, or you could try and emulate it, but when I tried to emulate it, the emulation was broken for the PS2 version, and I couldn't find a working PS2 emulator version, unfortunately. So the concept is cool, but unfortunately, there's some other parts of the game that it's not really the best thing. And unfortunately, they never tried something like that again, because you had the stretch of Western developed Silent Hills that were all very kind of poorly received, even though my hot take in gaming is that I love Silent Hill Homecoming, and you could go on YouTube and find thousands of people saying Silent Hill Homecoming is the worst Silent Hill ever, which is wrong, very wrong. It's so frustrating every time I'll go on YouTube, right, and I'll type in like, I want to watch other people's takes on Silent Hill, and so I'll just look up retrospectives on the series or people reviewing certain games, and there's always a common trend of like, oh yeah, Homecoming, worst one.
All right, well,
really?
let's hear about your hot take on that. So why do they not like Homecoming so much, and why do you think they're wrong?
Okay, so Homecoming, I'm not gonna sit here and be like Homecoming's a masterpiece. It's certainly not as good as any of the 4 first Silent Hills. Now, people don't like it, one, because the gameplay is extremely different compared to the other first 4 Silent Hills and Origins. It's basically, I don't know how much you've ever seen me play it, but if you remember, the combat is like over the shoulder, like you got to dodge these monsters and hit them back with your weapon. So, and you could do like combo hits and like dodge out of the way. It's kind of similar to like Legend of Zelda: The Ocarina of Time.
Oh, so it's like swipe, hit, and it like does, okay.
Yeah, exactly. I find that combat satisfying. I have no problem with that. It's better than the Arkham City type combat where I gotta mash X and then occasionally mash Y. At least with Homecoming, there's timing. Like you have to time your hits, otherwise they will hit you back and take chunks out of your health.
I do like that, timing your strike so that bah.
And I've never seen videos on Homecoming talk about how there's actual timing, and it's so annoying because they're like, oh, you just have to swipe, dodge, and it's like, no, you can't. I can't run up to a monster and start swinging my knife, because if I do that, I will get hit. I have to time it right, I have to block right, or I have to roll out of the way at the right exact time and then respond by hitting back at the monster. And nobody, when they do these stupid retrospective videos, ever mentioned that. It's like, you're like, obviously the combat is not refined. It's 2008 combat, so it's not, the best. People also thought the graphics weren't that good, and for an early 360 game, it looks fine. They say the plot is dumb. I have to disagree strongly. I think I'm gonna quickly summarize the plot really quickly. So again, spoilers for a game from 2008, like So a summary of the plot is you play as Alex Shepard, a guy who's coming back from the war. He was injured. He's a soldier. He's coming back from being discharged from injury, and he comes back to his town. He's trying to find his brother because his town of Shepherd's Glen, like almost the entire town is gone. He's trying to find his brother. Well, it turns out he accidentally killed his brother. They went out to the lake to like just bond as brothers, and Josh, his younger brother, was showing him this family heirloom that their dad gave them, and Alex got all jealous and took from him and was like, being an older brother, like, look, I got it. And he was like, doing older brother, like, oh, are you gonna grab it? And Josh slipped, hit his head on the boat, and drowned in the lake. And so Alex was put in a mental hospital because he had a mental breakdown over killing his brother. So just like how Silent Hill 2, Silent Hill is punishing James for killing his wife, Homecoming is punishing Alex for killing his brother. And a lot of these YouTubers fail to miss the obvious parallels between the two stories that were intentional. Of like, no, you've been in a mental hospital this entire time. Like, you're not a soldier. You pretended you were a soldier to cope with what you did, because when he comes to that realization of like his dad telling him like, no, you're not a soldier, and Alex is like, no, that's not true. I save people. I help people. And that's a huge, him trying to like convince himself that he is somebody who saves people. And I didn't kill my brother. I would never do that. But then there's that realization near the end of the game, like, oh, I'm a murderer. And then depending on the other choices you've had throughout the game, do you save somebody else when they need your help? Do you do this? Do you forgive somebody? And your ending is different depending on that. And I think a lot of people like to wash over the plot and be like, oh, it's just it's not even that interesting. It's just boring. Like, obviously, like they put Pyramid Head in the game, and that's only supposed to be James's monster from the second game. And it's like, okay, yes. Obviously, they put Pyramid Head in the game as a big Easter egg of like, hey, remember this character? I'm okay with that. It's a cool little cameo from a monster at that point we hadn't seen in 8 years. And considering the plot of 5 is supposed to be a parallel from 2, I don't see why it's a problem that they put Pyramid Head in the game as like a little nod. And so I think this idea of people like just simplifying the plot and being like, oh, it's just dumb. Like, I think they're missing the whole point of why I think the plot works, of an older brother having to come to terms with the fact that. So another aspect of the plot is Shepherd's Glen. It was founded by a bunch of people who left Silent Hill, who decided they were done with the cult, because remember Silent Hill also had a cult in it, right?
Yeah.
A group of people decided, you know what, we don't want to be in this cult anymore. We're tired of this. We're going to go make our own town. But because they were all important leaders of this cult, they had to make a deal. Like, hey, you can leave, but you have to sacrifice every 100 years. You have to sacrifice one of your children. If you don't, the Silent Hill curse is going to affect your town. Now, the twist is Alex's parents were descendants of these people from the cult. And so they decided, we're going to sacrifice Alex. And so they marked him to be the next sacrifice in the next, 100-year turn. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But because Alex accidentally killed Josh, that screwed up everything. So the reason why everyone's disappearing and their town of Shepherd's Glen is turned into a mini Silent Hill is because Alex accidentally killed Josh, ruining the whole thing. So there's that aspect too. And a lot of people gloss over that of like, oh, not only did he accidentally kill his brother, but he just accidentally effed over the town.
Wait, so he was the one who was marked, but when his brother died, that ruined it?
Because they already set up the ritual, they already went through everything, and they were basically getting ready to kill him like that next day. And the other 4 families had already killed their children, and so they were the only ones left. It's like, okay, you got to kill it so everything's good to go. But because Alex killed Josh, it basically threw everything for a loop, and then they missed that because they screwed up the ritual. That's why it got turned into Silent Hill.
Well, so that's what's confusing me is what about the brother dying changed why they couldn't use the other guy as the sacrifice.
Well, so at the end of the game, one of the last areas you go to is the place where the sacrifices happen. Okay. And they've got the coffins of all the 5 families that left Silent Hill. And it's got all the names of the people that had been killed already. And on the Shepherd, your last name Shepherd, on the Shepherd coffin, your name's already written out. And the pact has already been made with the cult. So they were already expecting Alex to die. But
so the problem was that the wrong person died, but they still have to use it.
Yes. And that obviously didn't fly. And so that's why Silent Hill happens to this little town. There's also an aspect of extreme jealousy with Alex, because obviously since the parents decided Alex is the one that's going to die, they end up treating him like shit. Because why put love and effort into a kid if you're just going to kill him? As messed up as that is, but that's the whole dynamic with the family. So they treat him like crap as he's growing up, and they treat Josh like the golden child and give him all these gifts and give him the family heirloom, which is why when they go out to the lake, Alex sees the family heirloom and gets jealous and takes it from Josh and, oh, you gonna grab it? And slips, hits his head and drowns. And so there's a lot of flashbacks of that jealousy that Alex gets over the years of, oh, well, I'm the older brother. Why am I getting treated like crap? I never get any of this stuff. They basically treat me like the family dog. Like, and all these freaking YouTubers miss out on like this, in my opinion, decently written out story. It's not the best story Silent Hill's ever come up with, but it's a lot better than people give it credit for. And I've just seen so many videos of like, oh, this is the worst Silent Hill because the story, the gameplay, the graphics. It's like, yeah, well, okay. If you compare it to, oh, you found the emotes.
Yes, sir.
If you compare it to the original Silent Hill games, okay, yes, it's not as good because those games had that kind of Japanese horror element to it that Japanese devs are really good at, in my opinion. And they were much more well thought out and we're better at psychological horror compared to this one. However, to just discredit it because, oh, it's not as good as the original games, and it doesn't look that good because it's an early HD title, and the gameplay isn't what I'm used to. And it's like, okay, yeah, but if you had the same slice of cake over and over and over and over again, you'd get tired of it. So I'm happy that they changed the combat and they changed up some things while keeping some of the original aspects. So that's some of the old and a lot of the new.
So I'm not gonna disagree with you that gamers are whiny bitches that will complain about
whiny.
everything. However, they have been eating the same bullshit and are been totally content with it. Call of Duty, they'll get the new game every single fucking time. For NBA, Madden, what's it called? World Cup, FIFA. It's all the same shit, just with a fresh coat of paint, and it's not that fresh actually. It's the same coat of paint, so it's just slightly wet, so it looks different. That's what they've been totally okay with some minor bitching because they'll never be happy. But like, man, as a gamers suck.
Gamers are very resistant to change. They're like the most like, no, I don't want no. But then that's okay. So you want to talk about a fan base that hates change? The freaking Legend of Zelda fan base, because every new 3D Zelda tries something different, and they always complain about it. And then years later, they'll be like, oh, actually, it's not that bad. So Ocarina of Time comes out, and people universally love it because it's like the first 3D Zelda, and it's like, wow, this is really cool. And then Majora's Mask comes out literally a year later, and because they demanded a release a year later, they heavily reused assets, but they made like a decent story. I'm not a huge fan of it, but anyway, people were complaining like, oh, it's too much like Ocarina of Time. Oh, this is just Ocarina of Time 2.0. And they're like, okay, well, we're gonna make a GameCube game now. So originally they were going to make a game that looked like Twilight Princess, but then they decided to mix it up because Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask were considered a little bit more dark in tone, and so that's why they made Wind Waker all cartoonish. But then the fan base was like, oh, what is this little baby crap? This looks like a kid for toddlers. Go back to Majora's Mask. That was dark and brooding. But Nintendo was like, yeah, but like 2 years ago you hated that game because you said, well, no, we want Majora's Mask. So like, okay, we'll make Twilight Princess here. Now you got a better version of Ocarina of Time. Like you got your serious graphics, your dark story. Oh, what is this? Ocarina of Time again? But at least Wind Waker was different and cool and vibrant. And they're like, but you said, okay, we'll do Skyward Sword. You can have cartoony, but you can also what is this? We're going back to baby graphics and motion controls. Go back to Twilight Princess. And they're like, okay, we're gonna do open world. Here's Breath of open world. Wow, trend chasers. At least Skyward Sword was unique, and it's like
Link looks like a girl.
Link, what is this? And it's like that fan base flip flops so much, and like I have my reasons for liking and disliking certain Legend of Zeldas, but I've never been in a situation where like, Wind Waker's too girly. Go back to Twilight Princess. Twilight Princess is just Ocarina of Time. Go back to Wind Waker, and it's like that fan base flip flops so much. And no wonder each Legend of Zelda is like, except for Tears of the Kingdom, because eventually people came around to Breath of the Wild, and because it's such a smash hit, they made Tears of the Kingdom. But until Tears of the Kingdom, every single Zelda game was wildly different in tone and what the main draw of the games were. And it's like that fan base is so bipolar. They always start out like, this game sucks, I hate it, go back. And then like years later, like, well, actually it's actually underrated gem.
I just gotta say, it's fan bases, man. They're the problem. Stop being fans, just be enjoyers.
I think there's always somebody who's like, oh, this fan base sucks the most. No, this fan base, like, no, they all suck. They're all trash.
Yeah, don't be a fan. Like, we've talked with our other friend about Star Wars stuff, and he's a big Star Wars guy, and we all can recognize that Star Wars fans are the worst.
Well, that's
with the exception of, like him, of course. Like he's got these reasonable views. It's not like, I hate this, I hate that, as there are with everything. There's reasonable people, but like
he's when you look level-headed when it comes to Star Wars.
Exactly, but when you look at like big group conglomerates, it's just like, y'all some whiny bitches. Like you drove the poor Jar Jar Binks guy to almost like killing himself. What the hell?
the young Anakin actor, not Hayden Christensen, but the guy that played Kid Anakin, like
baby
remember
Anakin.
you remember he literally lost his mind and like beat the crap out of his mom, saying like you ruined my life because of Star Wars. I'll tell you, I think one of my least favorite things is people like years later being like, well, actually, we always liked this. Like I said, the sequel movies were so bad that people all of a sudden were like, well, actually, we love the prequels. And it's like, no. I'm old enough to remember when the prequels came out for a decade. People were like, these movies are trash. They're terrible. Hayden Christensen will never act again. Natalie Portman is so bad in these movies. And now all of a sudden, because the sequels are bad, people are like, no. We've always liked the prequels. We always liked Phantom Menace. And I'm just waiting for the day that like maybe 5 or 6 years from now that people are going to be like, oh, the sequels, we always love the sequels. And I hate when people do that, whether it's movies, TV shows, or games, where all of a sudden, like, they can't admit, like, oh, we used to dislike it, but now we like it with the power of hindsight. It's always, no. We've always liked this. We've always appreciated this. We never hated it. And it's like, no, you're liars. I remember 10 like years ago when you were crapping on everything, and now because the sequels are that much worse, all of a sudden prequels are hidden gems. To be fair, honestly, Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, not very good. It's just they're more watchable than the new movies, but I'm not about to sit here and be like, oh, actually, they're great. No.
I mean, I'd say straight up, like, I don't think, as far as mainline Star Wars films go, I don't think any of them are good. I think they're all actually they're mediocre. Like, they create something good, but they themselves aren't. Like, I love the concepts they give. But if you want good Star Wars, peak quality Star Wars, you want like good stories, you want great universe information, stuff like that, movies are the last place you need to look. Looking at the like what was it? What's it called? Rogue One. It's not a mainline movie.
Yeah.
Fantastic. You want to look at like even Solo? I like Solo better than I liked any of the other mainline ones, and it didn't even get that best of a rap. Like, it was a fun movie with, I mean, a predictable plot, and like, it's not, no, what big twists are we gonna get? It's all characters we know, right? We know the history based on like side comments that they make in the main movies, especially between Lando and Solo, but they just make it happen in a way where you maybe won't expect it, but the end outcome is exactly what you'd expect. It was a fun movie.
Somebody's gonna dox you for saying Solo is the best out of any of them.
Yeah. But Rogue One or Squadron, whatever it's called, the Bothans, that one was better by far.
That's actually an interesting. I would actually agree on the sense that, in my opinion, I think I'll stop and say, like, I think Empire Strikes Back is one of my favorite movies of all time. Like, I will say that, but I will also say that I think better Star Wars stories are told via the games.
Absolutely.
I think Force Unleashed, the Force Unleashed game was great. I think I haven't played
Survivor,
Jedi Survivor, but I played Fallen Order. I think Fallen Order was great. The KOTOR games are celebrated with having amazing stories. I think a lot of the Star Wars games have better stories than most of the movies. Certainly the sequel movies.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Is like the KOTOR games. I couldn't get into 1, but that's because I played it after I'd already played 2 a long time ago, and I was used to modern games. So like trying to go back into something that was less developed than even the first one that I had played, like it wasn't great, but. The story, I know a lot of people really like. Same thing for KOTOR 2, which I really enjoyed. I thought it was a good time. The story was really interesting. And while some things might have been predictable to some people, it wasn't predictable to me. For like the Jedi, Fallen Order, and Survivor, those, oh my goodness. As far as storytelling goes, Jedi Survivor, sick. Fucking dope. I love it. Everything. It was such a fun game. It had a great story. It had absolutely great developments that occurred, like the interactions between characters, the growth. It was awesome. I loved it. It was such a fun experience, and I'm so looking forward to whatever their third one's going to be. I hope it can be a sooner game without being a rushed game, but who knows how that's going to go. But so I know Fallen Order was clunky in ways, and I felt like the story ended in a way that felt unfinished, but following it up with Survivor was really good and definitely worth it. Uh, I can't say I know much about the Force Unleashed. I never got into them. I think we talked about that a little bit before. But the
They're
point
pretty
being,
decent,
the movies.
self-contained. Sorry, go ahead.
The point being, like the mainline movies are not your go-to. Side things are the salt of the earth that seasons the universe that it's all built on. Like The Mandalorian, a lot of people weren't super fond about the most recent season. I thought it was fine. There were some episodes here and there that I was like, but I enjoyed the overall thing. It's just they can't seem to nail. We have a big galaxy-saving hero and some galaxy-destroying calamity. How is it going to happen? Like they just can't figure that out for some reason.
I would even argue you could also get a lot of people that would also say that the books have some pretty great stories. I've read a couple of Star Wars books way back before Disney acquired the franchise, and there's some pretty great stories in the books. So I would definitely agree. Like the movies, obviously there are a lot of diehard Star Wars fans, and like I said, Empire Strikes Back personally is a favorite movie of mine. But I would definitely say other mediums tell better Star Wars stories. However, it's interesting because you have to have the movies in order to have that foundation to which other stories can be made. So
Exactly.
it's like I hate the new movies. I hate sequels. I only really like Revenge of the Sith, and even in the original trilogy, I only really enjoy watching New Hope and Empire Strikes Back consistently. But you need all of those movies in order to have some sort of foundation for which the other stuff can be made. So it's kind of, you have that love-hate relationship. But yeah, I would definitely say like the games, I'm not really big on the TV shows, but that's just kind of, I don't really watch TV that much anyway, but I know that some people love some of the TV shows. Our friend in particular likes a lot of the TV shows, but yeah, definitely you're right when you say other mediums are the way to go for Star Wars. I have another interesting question for you. We talked about hot takes earlier, and we talked about hot takes in a previous episode.
Okay.
Was there ever an instance where you were so the game's coming out and you watch a trailer or you read up about it and you're just really excited for it, and then you get the game and like either maybe that's something that you saw in the trailer wasn't in the game, or you were just really let down? Was there ever a game where you were really hyped up for it and ended up not delivering for you? I'll go first.
Yeah.
Shadow. Okay, so Mordor Shadow of Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor came out in 2014. Did you ever play that?
No.
Okay, so it's
I watched you and the other guy.
yeah, it's a really fun game where you go around. It takes place before The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, and it's basically you going around killing orcs. It's basically you want a game where you just slaughter orcs, this is the one to do. The sequel, so the game came out in 2014. The sequel was announced in 2017, and I remember the big draw for that game because I remember I was in my dorm room at the time, following it, watching trailers. The big draw that they had was, oh, now you get to raid and conquer fortresses. So you build up your orc army. You have your own little mini ring to rule them all, where you can mind control orcs and basically conscript them into your army. And once you've got a big enough army, you can go and invade fortresses and kill the leader and conquer them, and then use them as outposts. And they had like this big 20-minute trailer of the main character fighting right outside the fortress, and then busting through the gates, taking over command posts, blowing up watchtowers and like trebuchet areas, eventually fighting your way down the streets into the main area, the main keep, breaking through the main keep, and then having an epic sword fight with the commander of that keep, and then you kill him, and then you take over the fortress. And it was like this big epic, like if you're about to be killed by an orc buddy that you mind controlled earlier might save you, or you could take over like war beasts and use them to destroy parts of the fortress. It's a really epic trailer. My mind was blown. I was like, oh, I can't wait to get this game. I'm so excited. Eventually the game comes out and I buy it, and I'm so hyped. I don't even really care much about the story. I'm just running through it. I'm like, I want to invade fortresses. Get me to that point. And so eventually getting through the story, I get to the point where I can invade fortresses, and it's such a letdown. It is nowhere near like the trailers at all. It's like the most boring, like, oh, okay, so I just kill a couple orcs and then the gates open, and then I go and capture 2 flags, and then I go into the keep and mash the same buttons because it's the Arkham City combat of X X X, okay, Y, X X X Y, and it was such a huge letdown for me. I was so unbelievably disappointed, and I went back and watched the trailer after beating the game, and I was like, okay, that's not in the game. Can't do that in the game. No, that's definitely not in the game. And I was like, wow, talk about false advertising. So I guess to reemphasize my question, what's the worst? What are some cases of false advertising when it comes to games for you personally that you're just like, wow, that was a lie?
Well, that's a hard one for me, as I don't think there's a lot of games where I don't really bother with a lot of trailers, to be honest. I probably listen more about word of mouth, things I see. Occasionally I'll look at a trailer, but it's never something I see and I'm like, ooh, that's a feature I want. I just expect this is a game based on something, and a lot of the time I'm not hyped up for something that I don't know about, right? Like I'm hyped for Spider-Man 2 because I played Spider-Man 1 and Miles Morales and I fucking loved it. Shit was awesome. So fun. I'm super looking forward to that. I know there's going to be Venom in it. I know there's going to be Harry in it. I know that's going to happen. That they said you can switch between Miles and Peter at any given time, so that's cool. I'm looking forward to that. But that's it. There's not like super special features. Maybe the wingsuit that Spider-Man gets with the webbing and whatnot, so you can do little glides around. Like, cool. I don't see any reason why those wouldn't be in the game. Like, there's no reason I would think they would take that out because it's unfinished or not ready. Like, no, those are really simple things to do. So there's no way that's gonna be the thing, right?
Well, you're the fall you I consider to be like the premier Fallout guy. Like when you played all the big games.
You mean the good Fallout guy? Yeah.
Yeah, the good Fallout guy. You know. Was there ever an aspect that you were hyped for with any of the Fallout games that didn't end up delivering?
So I feel like you're fishing for Fallout 76.
No, I'm not. I'm really not. I'm really not. I'm curious, like with like 4 and 3, and actually, to be honest, I didn't even think about 76, but that would be a good example. But maybe let's not to make it a little bit more interesting. Was there any aspects of 3 and 4 and maybe New Vegas that just not the overall game, but aspects of the game that maybe you were let down by, or like, oh, that's kind of underwhelming?
If we go into the idea of something that I was expecting to exist but didn't, I don't think there would be much for it. I was actually really happy with the way the settlement system worked in Fallout 4. Like, it worked out better than I ever thought it was going to for something that I hadn't seen before in a first-person shooter. The way you can build a settlement like that, I was like, this is as good as it can get, right? Of course, mods fixed everything that I never thought was a problem and made it so now I can't play the damn game without those mods. But, like, besides the regular things that I already complained about, like especially Fallout New Vegas, like I felt like it was just so dead. I was so disappointed. If there was a way to like rebuild or be a part of the building of the world, like I would have loved that, but that fell short. And it was mostly just, you're a guy who does quests and sometimes things change, but not really that many things. And you mostly just get rewards. Like, there are good stories, sure, thrown around there, but like that's the extent of it. It's not like features.
Where do you think? I'm actually curious because I've never really asked you about this. Where do you think 76 went wrong? Like, more specifically, what? Because obviously, I don't think they when they started making the game, they didn't envision it turning out the way it did when it first was launched. Obviously, some things went horribly wrong. What do you think was like the main reason why the initial launch, at least? Because I know a lot of it's been improved over the years, but why do you think the initial launch of 76 was as bad as it was?
Well, I think they were trying to create a game that they weren't ready to go 100% into. Like, they didn't drink their Kool-Aid, you know? They weren't ready to commit to a certain idea, and so they half-assed it. So, you know, they're like, okay, this is going to be populated by the players. This is, like, you are the wasteland. You are everything that makes the wasteland, right? That was their whole thing. But they failed to make it so that you had enough control to be. Now we've talked about this, and you've memed on me for it. I wanted the idea that you could really forge your own life. I thought they were going hard into you can just do things right. And I thought this was some basic shit too. Like, I thought this would have been easy, and that's why I was so disappointed it wasn't a thing. I'm talking about being a merchant. Yeah.
I knew that was coming. I had that in the back of my mind. I was like, he's going to drop it.
Yeah,
like,
so...
You're basically saying you wanted to have a situation where you could be any type of role you wanted. You could
exactly.
be a trader, a soldier, a merchant. Okay.
We're talking about the post-apocalyptic role-playing game, and you're telling me I couldn't have just chosen the most basic bitch role where I could just be... It's the most relaxed thing. Go around, grind for materials or something, craft some things, and then when you come across players, sell it to them, because the world would be populated with players. They'd be doing their own thing. It's more than just going around killing things. There's now a world that you're building, but they didn't do that. They said, okay, wait, no, you're still going to just go wandering around killing things and collecting scrap and build a camp. That was all they had. They had no real story. It was go do events. They tried to go way too hard into... We have robots that are doing all the things that we would normally have a regular NPC do, and you're not going to be allowed to do by yourself. And then we have events, because this is supposed to be like an MMO. I think they went wrong with trying to approach it half-assed MMO, half-assed Fallout game. And I think all their developments thus far have made it a better version of both. And I can say this, MMOs are bad games. There's my hot take for the day.
You were really nailing it with the hot takes tonight. You are on one.
I've tried to have this conversation with some of our friends before, and they won't let me have it. But I'm going to say that
I'm not an MMO guy, so this is the perfect person to have a conversation with.
MMOs are the same fucking game every single damn time. You cannot tell me they're not. And now the counter argument is that would you expect a first-person shooter to be that much different to other first-person shooters? Like, they should play the same, right? You aim, you click, you shoot, you switch weapons, They do different things. Like, yeah, sure, I get that.
Yeah.
But all the MMOs, every single one of them is not like that. They're actually, sorry, I take back that every single one of them. There's like 2 that tried doing different things, and they shut down. But they all do. You have a bar of skills. Sometimes you have an entire grid work of skills.
Yeah, skill tree.
And all you do is push a button that activates that skill. You don't like do combos like in a Street Fighter game. You don't do like various striking patterns like in a Souls-like game. And it's just push this button and then let your character do all the work for you. That's all it is. It's all this super far away, zoomed out third person. You feel floaty as you move. You don't have weight to you. You can't... When you walk away in a regular, let's say like Skyrim or something, you back away from the melee fighters so that you can get distance between you and them and they won't hit you. When you're playing a game like an MMO, that's not really a thing you can do. Some of them have dodging buttons. You just time it, you dodge, great. But you can't just back away and not get hit in the same capacity. It's kind of there, but it's not fully there. It's just small things like that. They all stack together, and you get the same game where it's, okay, the game doesn't start until you hit level 50 or level 100 or something. And then the end game is raiding. It's go into this dungeon, memorize this attack pattern, execute it perfectly. That one jackass on your team is not going to do that, and you're going to wipe 16 times until you finally get it. And, I understand overcoming hard challenges, especially for things like that. Like I said, I played Souls-like games when you have to memorize these attack patterns, but it feels like you have more control over it. I feel like I'm doing more. I don't feel like I'm doing anything when I play a fucking MMO. I feel like I'm just, either I'm clicking where to go or I'm holding W and changing my camera, and that's it. Everything else is click that enemy, hit this button. Let it play out, hit a different button. I don't even have to have my hand on the keyboard or the mouse for 90% of it. I can just tap it with one finger. That's the game. I don't like that. I think that's bad. I think that's boring, and I think every single time I've tried to play an MMO, that same shit keeps me from playing MMOs. I've tried so many of them. I've quit.
I will say, in the handful of MMOs that I have tried to play, I find that genre very boring. It's weird too, because it should be the perfect, just kind of turn off your brain and do quests with your friends. But in any time that I've ever sat down, like, yeah, I'm going to try an MMO, I'm just bored. You get into the same loop of, like, we have a friend who does these things called dailies. And to me, it just sounds like it's a chore list. Like, I got to log in and I got to do this list of things. And then I got to log off. And then I'm going to do the same thing tomorrow. I'm going to log on. I'm going to do this list of 5 things and I'm going to log off. And that's really MMOs. I'm going to turn on this thing. I'm going to collect 8 herbs and do this. And then maybe this one other thing and then log off and do the same thing tomorrow. And it's like, is that fun?
No,
is that really fun?
That's exactly it. That's part of the reason why it's a chore list. It's just doing things that you don't think are fun so that you can finally get to something that is fun. And even then, like, what that is,
you're so right.
It's such a pain in the ass. And like, oh yeah, guaranteed drops? Nope. You get RNG on everything. You want certain equipment? Go fuck yourself. You're gonna get it on like your 30th try with a decent squad that you'll never see again. Because, I don't know, you were outside of your guild when you matched up with them. There's just so much that I just cannot get behind. ESO is, I was so looking forward to Elder Scrolls Online, I should say, or ESO. I was really looking forward to it, because I was like, oh, fuck yeah. We're getting the Fallout 76 treatment, I think before Fallout 76, of the Elder Scrolls. Like, I can get my Skyrim multiplayer, big world, all of Tamriel. That sounds so awesome. And then I played it and I was like, this is just another MMO with a fucking Elder Scrolls paint on it. Like, they got, oh wow, the health bar looks the exact same, but I don't even aim my damn bow. Like, I aim it for one shot, and then why do I even bother after that? It's all homing arrows. And that's the problem. If you're getting attacked by ranged enemies, you can't just walk out of the way of their arrow. You have to either time your dodge button, if you get one in whatever game, or just take the hits.
You just don't get it, Lucas, okay? Obviously, this is entertaining because doing chores is fun. I like doing the same thing every single day. I've
played chore games. I've played Drug Dealer Simulator. It's literally organize your drugs, buy drugs, sell drugs. Like that. Yeah, those are chore games. But they have a sense of pride and accomplishment.
Oh no!
And feel like is still more gratifying. I enjoy that more. And Fallout 76 plays nicely. It plays like a nice first-person shooter. You have your various quote-unquote potions. You have your Stimpaks. You've got your Radaways. You have your Rad-X's. You have all these things that do these various effects that you can boost yourself to be stronger for certain things. Raise your intelligence so your XP is higher, so that grinding isn't so much of a chore. And then they reward you every level with, improving your skills, like your special specifically. And then the whole card system, at first I was kind of about, but the way they've cleaned it up, I love it. I think it's great, and I really hope the next Fallout has something similar, because I think it's a really good way to balance your character out. And then, of course, by the time you get to like level 500, you've now maxed out all of your special, because you can do that at some point.
One thing that makes modern MMOs a pain in the ass too is, you mentioned earlier, like, you could argue with older MMOs, like, at least, okay, you do chores, and eventually there is a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Eventually, doing all these chores, I will eventually get to something. With modern MMOs, that's not even the case, because, you want the best items available? Well, you could grind, or you could just buy currency and buy the items.
That's true. Pay to win is rampant.
In MMOs specifically, too. I mean, Diablo 4 just came out, and a lot of people are upset about how pay to win it is. And like, look, Diablo 3 had its issues.
Not an MMO, is it?
It can be an MMO.
Diablo 4, really? I haven't paid attention to it because I couldn't really care less about Diablo games.
No, I'm sure. Okay, well, anyway,
Immortal might be.
I could have sworn.
And Path of Exile definitely is.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. But anyway, modern MMOs specifically have that issue of pay to win. Like, you don't want to do your chores? That's okay. Just slice an extra couple of bucks and, give you a few levels, give you a new weapon. But you still have to grind too. There's that lie of, if you buy these things, you don't have to grind, but you still fall back to grinding. So it's like, okay, not only are you still doing the same boring chore list, you just burned money.
Yeah.
I don't like MMOs. I've tried it multiple times. I've tried different MMOs, and it's the same thing every time. I get to a point where I'm just bored. And for me personally, if a game is boring, that's worse than it being bad. Because if it's bad, at least I can laugh at the bad game designer. I can be like, wow, what were they thinking? But if it's boring, I don't want to waste. I don't have that much time during the day. I don't want to waste my time grinding an MMO.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, God, it just gets so. It's so tedious and so disappointing because it's such a great idea. A massively multiplayer online experience. There's people everywhere, real people playing this game, doing things, being part of the world. You can talk to them. They can help you. You can help them. They can ignore you. Like, it doesn't matter. It's there. It's like this grand social idea of what gaming could be. And every single game decided they were going to do it the same way and then just change the what's it called? The context of why you're doing it all. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the biggest flaw in that. And I should also mention that Fallout 76, I understand, isn't a massively multiplayer online game because it's very small lobbies. I don't know if it even goes up to 32 people, to be honest. But they give you the one big map and there's just people wandering around minding their own business, which I like a hell of a lot more. Even if it's smaller, the idea is still executed better. And I get you can't make it too much bigger, especially with a Bethesda title, with their engine being what it is. You can only handle so much. But if they were able to handle it, maybe, I don't know, make their engine but better instead of just updating it, then maybe they could actually come out with something that was capable without crashing.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I just, we have, like you said earlier, a lot of our friends like MMOs, and I've tried to understand it. I don't really understand the draw of MMOs. Like, you're just doing, if I want to do chores, I'll just vacuum my floor or I'll do my laundry. At least I get more satisfaction out of that than sitting there and be like, I gotta do my dailies. I gotta sit here, I gotta go through a checklist. I'm having so much fun.
Yeah. What are you doing? It sounds like you're just hitting your space bar.
No, sorry, I was fixing one of my keyboard keys.
Oh.
Speaking of slamming down on a space bar, I think now's a good time to get our ducks in a row and see who's joined the squad.
That's the tab button, I'm pretty sure, but yeah, you're right.
One of the ducks, I've been watching one of these ducks, and he's got overalls. I thought he was like a Homer Simpson duck for a second, but I think all he does is just blow bubblegum.
Oh yeah, the bubblegum one.
I think that's a new one that got added today. I'm not really sure where we left off.
Where are you? Oh, there you are. I was trying to find your name.
I'm hidden in plain sight. But yeah, we've got, I guess we could start with a bubblegum duck. We've got a bubblegum duck, a Christmas ornament duck, a pizza duck, which is, I don't understand the green, but wait. That's kind of, oh yeah, it's a pizza slice duck, gingerbread duck, wood duck, and then I think we're back to going through some of the stuff we've seen before. Watermelon duck.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Ball. I feel like there should have been more added in.
We got a new one jumping in. I think it slows down the drop rate as it goes on.
Well, I don't know if you noticed while we were talking. I kind of saw this going on, but there was points where the game started lagging for me.
It's the disco duck.
We got the disco duck?
Hell yeah.
Nice, right at the end. Yeah, but I don't know if it was lagging for you at all, but there were certain points where the game was starting to lag a little bit.
No, I wasn't having that issue.
Oh, well, I guess, my computer just can't handle the amount of ducks. Right, but yeah, let's send our audience home. What do you say?
Let's hear this disco real quick.
Do you feel funky?
Is it?
Do you recognize the song?
No. I was just saying it because I thought it might have changed what it was doing. But yeah, that's great. I love that. I'm glad we finally got that.
Right at the very end.
Hell yeah. I'm gonna have to pick that next time. But yeah, that's been it. So this is slightly longer, I think, than our usual ones, which I'm always down for. Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. This has been the Placid Plastic Ducks. Oh, sorry. What am I saying? This has been the Placid Plastic Podcast. And
we got him.
We got
gentlemen, we got him.
We got him. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this, hit subscribe. We come out with episodes ideally every Wednesday, and it's a good time.
Smash that like button, ring that bell, tell your friends, tell your family, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, if you really want to help out, telling people is the way to go. But yes,
if you want to hear two guys in their mid-20s complain about games, here we are.
Well, I'm hitting my late 20s now.
Goodbye, everybody.
We'll see you in the next one.